Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Monday Musings, Danny's SportsWrap, and we are 5 weeks about into the stay-at-home order in our area. And boy, it seems more like 5 months now, doesn't it? You have to admit to yourself, if you feel like this has been just 5 weeks, then you're doing a heck of a lot better job than most people are. And we are finding it, in my world anyway, I think I'm finding it a little bit tougher as it goes along. At first, you're like, oh, wow, this is going to be a challenge. And then you sort of get into a little bit of a rhythm. But then that rhythm became sort of a Groundhog Day type of thing, and you're trying to not fall into that particular thing. So much good luck to you as you try to navigate your way through this. And maybe we're starting to somewhat see some signs of light, but there's troubling things that are coming along with that as well, as people are so eager to get back to things that are normal. The weather's turning a little better, and maybe we've gotten past, for the most part, the cold days that make it seem even more depressing, but there certainly is a fatigue factor involved here. Maybe lessened a little bit this week in the sports world because there's a couple of big events. Now, this, I would say, is a good week in the sports world by our current standards because fans can look forward to the NFL draft, and it's a 3-day process, and it starts Thursday, so we still have a few days of looking forward to that. For many people, that is really a cool thing. Now, the NFL has been so omnipresent that maybe there's been a little fatigue factor there too. There's been no March Madness and no start of the baseball season and everything else. So you know probably more about these players than you've ever known in the past, even if you were the biggest draftnik in the world. And of course, on Sunday night, last night, the debut of the Michael Jordan documentary, and I'll express in the second segment because we always kind of split right now between life things in segment 1 and sports things, such as they are in segment 2. My slight ambivalence with what is a tremendous product. There's no question about that with Michael Jordan, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But indeed, there's only so many closets to clean and so many gardens to do and so much mulch to put down. And a lot of those things have already been done. So much mesh to take off the fencing that I put in to keep our dog contained when it was a little puppy. All those things have been done yet, but we'll touch on that a little bit. We'll touch on the sports world, such as it is, where we're at, and we still have no certainty whatsoever in any area, but people are coming up with idea after idea after idea. It's all part of Monday Musings, Danny's SportsWrap, right here at the Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Nice to be with you, safe, home, be well, all those things that we've grown to say now, they still mean a lot, and keep them in mind as we talk a little sports, and I try to give you a little entertainment and try to make it a little bit different. Coming up next.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery, wishing you well while you stay safe during this time of uncertainty. Due to the recent news, you won't be able to get the same in-restaurant experience at the 23rd Street Brewery that you've come to expect over the past 16 years. But you can get the same delicious items prepared with the highest level of staff cleanliness available for carryout and delivery through our partners Eat Street. You can also still enjoy our craft beers and crowlers for to-go service. So remember, stay safe, and together we will all get through this time of uncertainty.
My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I've been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday, and make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back to Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, and it's not always a sports wrap these days. It's kind of a life wrap, and one of the things that pops into my mind is that when you have a lot of time on your hands, and I run a business, so I'm very busy with that, but a lot of the marketing aspect and meetings part has been taken away, so that creates more time. You are looking for creative ways to use the time, not just pass the time. I think I've used that phrase on multiple occasions, but some of those things are that we've done to either provide a release or provide some productivity are growing to be a little more creative challenge. For instance, my wife and I have talked about this several times, not only on our podcast that we do together, but also on this one, about the fact that each of us generally during the week take our own little therapeutic drive, which in this area of the world, you can go out in the country, you can see a lot of neat places, maybe places, hopefully places you haven't seen before, go through neighborhoods, see people walking around, but with each passing day, as you do this more and more, you're kind of revisiting the same places and trying to find places you haven't been. And now it's almost like you'd have to drive to Nebraska in order to find some places that you haven't seen. So even that's a little bit of a challenge. And then on the weekends, my wife and I generally have gotten into a pattern where we've done all our little creative drives during the week separate from each other because we're home in our house, both running our businesses from here so often. We do one together. And now we're on about 5 of those, and we're also kind of finding a Groundhog Day aspect to that. Saturday's drive, was one where we did find an area of this place in Kansas that we hadn't driven on before. It was out on Highway 32 beyond K7 out in Linwood, and I'd never been in that particular area, so that was kind of fun. But when we finished that one, I was like, well, that's a place I haven't been, honey. But that's another place we check off the box that now we will have seen it. And so that's becoming a bit of a creative challenge as well. But one thing I want to talk about at the outset is that as we've gotten into this particular challenge together, at first I think everybody was really together on this. I think while it was not in any way a great thing that we were trying to embrace, that we had to stay home, that maybe we couldn't go to work, that we've lost our job for the time being and we can't work, and that creates challenges. But people, I think, understood, and they realized in seeing the statistics and seeing everything else that this was an important thing. Well, now, 5 weeks in, and with the reports that we are flattening the curve and maybe getting to the point where we can at least see the tunnel, not the light at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel itself anyway, I think we've started to see a little bit more division, and I think that's a dangerous and unfortunate thing. In times of trouble in this country, generally we've done a good job in the past of sort of banding together and having some unity. And I think I'm seeing some cracks in that. And I think I'm seeing on both sides of the fence kind of letting their politics get involved in this and thinking of it as a political issue, not an issue of health. And I think that we've got to watch out for that because we all want to get back to normal. We all want to go back to work. We all want to go and be able to eat in a restaurant. We all want to go and see a play or a movie and go to a theater and go to a concert and go to a club. These things are going to be really slow, or we're going to be doing this for a long, long time. And it's a message that many people are giving, and I think there's getting to be perhaps a little bit too much eye roll. I know at first when, for instance, they talked about wearing a mask, I wasn't much into that, and now I found myself not completely diligently all the time. I forget, but I've used a mask when I've gone into the grocery store or things like that. It's not that big a deal. I can't say that I'm 100% on that, but just hoping that people can kind of set aside things and not rush ahead and just show a little bit of patience. Hey, I've expressed so far on this podcast how challenging it is right now, but I think we do have to have a little bit of just kind of trying to keep our sanity and our wits about us. It has been only 5 weeks. I think we have to think about it that way, even if it does seem like 5 months, and damn if it doesn't as well. But there are things that are so different. For instance, I've talked about the fact that my wife has taken up golf again, and we're going to play golf this week. But one thing that you never really had to think about during the week, I've often, because of the way my schedule worked out, both when I was working full-time at WHB and now when I'm working full-time at DannyClinkscale.com and the Reasonably Irreverent podcast, generally I've taken my time to play golf on slow days on a Monday afternoon or a Tuesday afternoon, and I pretty much just would go to the golf course and generally there weren't that many people there, and I'd just play. And one of the places I played occasionally was a little course in Leavenworth Golf Club, which actually is in Lansing. And it's a shortish course. It's an old course. It's fun to play, and it's not really particularly difficult, but it's challenging enough that you don't feel like if you shoot a good score that it doesn't count or anything like that. Lovely place, and it's a fantastic drive from Shawnee, the back way out there. And so there are several reasons why I've gone out there a few times when it's ordinarily probably a place I wouldn't play. Well, when we were plotting to play golf last Wednesday, I called out there in the morning because it's a shorter course. There's not much water there, not much forced carry. It's kind of a good place for a beginner, like my wife was feeling like, even though she's played a lot of golf, she was restarting her golf career. I said, hey, that's a good place. I called and I said, hey, do you have any tee times this afternoon? And they said, no, we don't have any tee times basically he said then, it was 10 o'clock in the morning, he said till 5 o'clock. He says, generally you have to call 3 or 4 days in advance. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. And it just shows how people are craving things. Now, part of it is the fact that they have to separate the tee times out. But still, this was a place where I could just drive out there, even though it's about a half-hour drive from my house, and count on the fact that I'd just be able to kind of waltz up on the first tee and start playing golf by myself. And it would be leisurely, and I wouldn't have to wait a lot. And now you have to plan 4 days in advance to go out, and that's a big difference as well. And then in one of the last couple of days, it was just the middle of the afternoon, and I thought, because everybody needs some things to do right now, this would be a fun time to drag out the old Stratomatic baseball game. And then it quickly clicked, boom, no, I can't do that because I can't have friends come over here and come into my house. Now, I could play the game by myself, but I've never played Stratomatic baseball, and you're probably maybe scratching your head as to what it is. It's just a relatively complicated, but not incredibly, board baseball game that we used to play back in the day in college, and we did a tournament a few years ago, but I haven't played it very much. But just in that click of a second, you realized how different the world is, that you thought, that'd be a cool idea. Like maybe in your world you would have said, hey, let's have a poker game. No, we can't do that. So I don't know if I'm going to play a little Stratomatic baseball by myself, but it did get me thinking about Stratomatic baseball and how much fun back in the day we had with it and how seriously we took it, every bit as seriously as fantasy drafts and dynasty leagues and things like that. And one thing that has been a remaining lifelong legacy for me is the fact that it introduced me to many baseball players that I never would have had much interest in, because we used to play the game with historical teams like the 27 Yankees and the 24 Washington Senators and the 31 Philadelphia Athletics. And, of course, the major people in that, and we drafted the players, so we were mostly drafting great players like Walter Johnson and Babe Ruth and people like that. But, for instance, a player I used to have a soft spot in my heart and had on several of my Stratomatic teams was the left fielder for the 1927 Yankees. His name was Bob Musial. And he was a very fine ball player for a short period of time. And I'm quite the baseball historian, spend a lot of time digging around in the baseball encyclopedia, still nod off to sleep a lot of times with the baseball encyclopedia by my side. But I never would have had the affection I did for one Bob Musial and want to know about him. And he was a fine left fielder and he could field. And I did research on him. Never would have done that for Stratomatic baseball. But it not only triggered a memory for me, but it also gave me another indication of the fact that we are in a different world, and that maybe after this is getting past, maybe I will have that Stratomatic baseball tournament with my friends over here, because they'll be able to come over and we can have a good time and have some beers and relive some old times as well. Let's get back to the times of the day coming up next and talk straight sports, as we'll talk about the Michael Jordan special and the NFL draft coming up and where our leagues are at a little bit as we make progress towards playing sports. I'm not so sure that's the case. All that straight ahead on Monday Musings-Danny Sports Wrap for this Monday, 5 weeks in. Let's hope that 10 weeks in, it'll be a lot different world. We're talking sports, sort of, next.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner, and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that, and moving on in age as we all are. What do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. If they just contact me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Welcome back to Monday Musings, Danny's Sports Wrap. And I don't know if you've heard, but apparently this Michael Jordan guy was good at basketball back in the day. And I guess if you haven't heard, they're doing a big special on the last championship of the Chicago Bulls, which rolled out last night. I have to admit that I probably was a little bit less, maybe far less excited about the prospects of this special coming out than many people. Of course, in a landscape where we don't have any games, people are desperate for entertainment. But we've seen so many of these retrospectives, and certainly this is different. It's about an iconic figure in sports. But we've done so much of this that I think in some ways it's great for ESPN, which is going to stretch this over 5 weeks, which I didn't really know until today. I figured we'd get all of these in a fairly short period of time. But anyway, one of the things that helped me get a little bit fired up to watch this more than usual, I lived through the Michael Jordan era. I know Michael Jordan's really good at basketball. I know Michael Jordan's personality pretty well. But my wife lived in Chicago during this period of time when the Bulls were great, so she had some interest in watching the show as well. So I watched one episode. Spoiler alert there. That's not really a spoiler alert, but I didn't watch the second one. I probably will do that in the next few days, maybe. Sorta, kinda. And my takeaway from the first documentary was that first hour of the documentary is that it's an extremely well-done piece of documentary film work. But my other takeaway that's probably a whole lot different than other people is that I am more interested in the things that will be explored away from Michael Jordan than Michael Jordan himself. And I've heard plenty from Michael Jordan through the years. I kind of know his personality. I think the more that we get into that final season, I think I'll be more interested in it. In the first piece, I was far more engaged when they were talking about Jerry Krause and his motivations about breaking up the team, and listening to Phil Jackson speak and Scottie Pippen and Steve Kerr and people like that, than I was about Michael Jordan. And in the end, the first episode really was pretty much a vanity piece for Michael Jordan. And that's great, but I think most people have seen Michael Jordan dunk the basketball. I think most people realize he's a great basketball player, and having people tell me that he's a great basketball player doesn't really interest me all that much. Now, I think that the rest of the stuff is great and fascinating, and I'm looking forward to that aspect of it. I'm not really looking forward to Michael Jordan sitting there with what appears to be some kind of liqueur, I guess, and wax on about other people and whether he needed motivation and extra motivation to be great. And I think we all knew this. He went out of his way to criticize his high school teammates at his Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Is there anything really new here? But the other aspect of it is the fact that we have such a sparse sports landscape that when we get a nice event to watch, like when the Tiger Woods Masters was coming up, when this documentary series was coming up, we get so much build-up to it, that by the time you get to it, there's almost a fatigue factor, at least for me. Now, I did find this an entertaining watch, and I think I probably will watch the episodes. Am I going to make sure and sit down on Sunday and have to consume it and be on Twitter and everything else? No, I don't think I'll do that, but this is a very well done piece. I like documentaries where there isn't narration. It's a nice tactic. I think it's a good way to do things. There are other great documentaries that Ken Burns' documentaries all use narration, and they're very effective. Some you really need it. I don't think you need it in this particular case, and letting the principals tell the story is very interesting to me. And as opposed to most people, I think less of Michael Jordan is more for me in this particular viewing of The Last Dance, and I want it to be more The Last Dance than The Michael Jordan Show, and episode 1 to me was kind of The Michael Jordan Show. And the more I get The Last Dance and the less I get just The Michael Jordan Show, the more I'll be happy in viewing that. But I think most people will take as much Michael Jordan as they can get. This almost assuredly is going to be an incredible blockbuster for ESPN, and they are going to get over a month of activity on it. And the other part is just there's such overkill. The documentaries, the 2 hours of the documentaries concluded, and then the entire, basically, SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt was talking about what we just watched. And this morning on the sports talk shows, it was a discussion of what we just watched. And it's just the nature of the times that we don't have that much to consume. So when we get something of quality, which this is, to consume, we tend to completely overanalyze and over-anticipate it. And I think that's what's happening here. But that doesn't mean that I don't think it's good sports entertainment, and we can certainly use plenty of that right now. Speaking of build-up and overkill, I think you might have heard that the NFL draft is this Thursday. And this is a situation where the NFL has really been the only sport that is active and doing things almost exactly as they would completely removed from the coronavirus. Yes, they have to do their things digitally, and there's no people at the draft. But as far as the business of operating football teams and evaluating players, moving forward the season, signing free agents, it's all been the same. So the NFL has been the constant. And the constant has been that we have gotten far more build-up for the NFL draft for this year than we ever have before. And in the past, we've gotten plenty. But as I mentioned earlier, no NCAA tournament, no start to the baseball season. So it's been basically, in the sports world, virtually 24/7, 365 NFL drafts. So I am ready for actually drafting on Thursday. And I think everybody has pretty much covered, probably in many ways far better than I could do, what the Kansas City Chiefs have in store on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They have positioned themselves well. They're in a landscape where continuity is going to be very, very valuable in the National Football League. I think the Chiefs have gotten a great advantage break. how you can call anything that comes out of the coronavirus a break. But as far as competitive balance and entering a post-championship season, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs could have gotten things much better. Their roster is at a point where there's no real screaming, crying out need at any one particular position. I think we know that most people would say that linebacker, perhaps leaning on the side of somebody who can play in coverage extensively, and cornerback are the Chiefs' biggest needs, but they somewhat filled those in free agency as well. They have 20 of 22 starters returning. The Chiefs are positioned very well. It should be a lot of fun for people to have something to do for 3 days as they enter their weekend and see it in a different way, and maybe we'll see some snafus and some fun things. That'll be another aspect of it that'll make the NFL draft fun, just to see a different landscape of the National Football League and their draft and how they are doing it. And the challenges that will be seen there, the challenges that will be seen in the coverage of it. There's only going to be 2 people in studio. Everybody else is going to be at their homes, and I imagine we're going to have some points of time where people are not heard or not seen, and they send out kits to 58 players who are supposed to set up their own little studio, as it were, to be participators in the draft, and I'm sure some of those will go sideways. So that will all be interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see what the Kansas City Chiefs do, but it will only be icing on a very nice cake for the Kansas City Chiefs when the NFL draft rolls around on Thursday, and we all will be watching. When we all will be watching the other sports remains way, way, way up in the air. On this day, this Monday, across the world, some shutdown orders, lockdowns are being eased. You see it in places in Europe, and shops are opening, and things are starting to percolate in an area where the virus obviously was ahead of where it is right here. We are starting to see some tensions, as I mentioned in the first part, in this country with people wanting to get things rolling. But how and if and when we get things rolling in sports across the board in each and every sport is problematical. And right now, maybe the one that's being discussed the most is college football. It does come up the first as far as seasons that have not begun yet or weren't scheduled to begin yet. Obviously, baseball is still talking about how they're going to start their season, MLS. But college football seems to be in the focus because, well, first of all, it's such a big deal. It involves so many people. And also, I think it's a more interesting talking point because you have many, many layers of this. For people who think that college football has to be played, mainly their argument is economic. But in talking to a lot of people who know a lot about college football, one particular issue that was raised to me is the fact that, this is really, college football is really good for a really important segment of the players who are involved, players who maybe come from more stressed economic backgrounds, who are at home now and not being able to train properly and not being able to eat properly and not being able to consume information if they don't have a great computer access and things like that. For people who are of means, the difference is not great. They probably have access to good physical fitness equipment, have their own little gyms, things like that. They have more structure in their lives, so that isn't as important. For other people who maybe wouldn't even be going to college if it weren't for football, the college experience is one that's really, in many ways, much better than their home experience. And so that's an aspect that would be a good thing to get things rolling. But the overarching thing here, to me, is the fact that you will just strip away the last vestiges of student-athlete and being able to use that phrase if college football is played in empty stadiums on campuses where students have not been allowed to come back and only football players have. College basketball has already advanced to the point where I think we're talking about really a pseudo-professional sport. But college football includes so many players that have really no thought that they'll be playing professional football. Heck, many of them hardly play college football. They're on scholarship. They work hard. They attend class. They get on the field maybe their senior year, or they get to run down on special teams, or maybe not even that. So there's so many people like that there is still that aspect of student-athlete as far as college football is concerned. It's going to be tough to sell that in any way, shape, or form if people are still trying to sell it. If indeed college athletes are brought back to an empty campus where nobody else is going to class at the campus, everything is being done online, it's deemed unsafe for those people, but it's deemed safe for college football players to sweat and bleed and bump into each other and play in close quarters and practice in close quarters and stay in close quarters if the general student body isn't allowed to. It will just be, we need the money, we need you to make the money, go play football. And I think that's a bad look. Maybe that decision will not have to be made in that way. Maybe we'll have football by the 1st of September and students will be back on campus in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, but it certainly is a multi-layered conversation, and I don't think it's being discussed on as many layers as it probably should be. Across the board in the other sports, it just seems like we're pretty much at status quo. You look across the pond, even in places where they're trying to start up soccer, and all they keep saying is, this particular deadline. In Germany, the Bundesliga was one of the leagues across the world that was going to start the soonest, and they seem to be somewhat backing off on that. Major League Baseball hasn't trotted out any new information over the past week or so about their various plans, the one in Arizona and Florida. We haven't heard basically any news about that, as we sort of sit in a little bit of a limbo, and a limbo created by the fact that little bit by little bit, there seems to be some momentum for opening up some things here in this country, and deadlines are being set shorter distances into the future, and different areas of the country are affected in different ways, and it's all a big holding pattern right now, and when we are going to play sports, nobody really can tell. But one thing that seems to be more and more and more clear is that it seems very unlikely that we'll be seeing sports with fans in the stands in 2020. It just doesn't seem like, even in October, November, December, that we are going to be able to see large gatherings of people in extremely close quarters to watch sports. We are going to get video sports if and when we get that, and it's still way up in the air as far as that is concerned. You see news like that came out today that Novak Djokovic, the tennis player, is opposed to vaccination. And as one of the 1, 2, 3 best players in the world of tennis, he would be basically unable to play, at least at the outset, when vaccination and or testing would be mandatory. And in the long term, probably vaccination is going to be mandatory at least for a while. And that's another discussion point, too, whether vaccination for the coronavirus and COVID-19 can be effective unless it is made mandatory in nations. And that is yet another of the stepping stones that are part of our life and part of our sports life. And, of course, the sports life is far down the ladder as things go, but that's one of the releases we like. That's one of the reasons that things like the Last Dance documentary are so overwhelming in their outreach, because people are just desperate for sports information and sports entertainments in the lack of games. And I think everybody is about run out on wanting to watch vintage games. There was another Super Bowl on Fox yesterday. One thing I will never understand in closing is when they put things up on the screen to indicate what the show is. And especially in something like golf or tennis or something that was a long way back. I mean, everybody would know that the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl against the Atlanta Falcons in 1999. But for instance, the other day I watched the 2013 Heritage Golf Classic, the final round. I didn't remember who won that tournament, but a lot of times they'll just put it up on the screen. Graham McDowell wins his second American tournament. Why would you do that? Keep us in the dark. Let us have some mystery. It's a whole lot more fun to watch a vintage game if you don't know what has happened. And that's one of the reasons that football games or World Series carry a little bit less cachet in watching them, because you absolutely positively know. Is it fun sometimes to watch how you got there? Yeah, a little bit. But I think we'd all rather have mystery in our sports lives. And when we will get that mystery again is a mystery right now. That'll do it for Monday Musings. Danny SportsWrap. Be back next Monday. Probably a little bit of status quo, hopefully a little bit of change right here.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new. This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like the law offices of Kenneth McRae, developing a unique strategy for your family law case. Divorce can be civil law, not civil war.